Hopefully you saw my prior video on what I choose to call the education revolution, and I think the pandemic and the pandemonium that we are experiencing, two separate events converging together along with the convergence of technology, big data, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, genomics, robotics, all this converging. And then with the two events, the pandemic and the pandemonium from the George Floyd situation, and the resulting riots brought back memories to me of, I believe it was March the 1st, 1991, when Rodney King was beaten by four policemen, I believe it was, to almost death in Los Angeles. The riots actually didn't happen until a year later after those four policemen were acquitted. But nothing has changed. We still have this conflict. We still have this separation that allows authority, the police, to vent their anger, and that's what it has to be, and their disgust and their hate on our fellow citizens. And nothing has changed. I could list additional names. You know them. You've seen the situations. And we have a terrible problem. And we aren't solving it. And I think the real reason we aren't solving it is because we aren't addressing it. We aren't addressing the root cause of what causes this kind of behavior. And the root cause is education. And it is as a result of the difference between those who have and those who don't have. I watched on TV as a group of young men struggled to get those steel street barriers loose so that they could take them and throw them through store windows, Macy's windows, jewelry stores' windows. And I thought, why would they do that? And the reason is because they wanted what was inside. But then I said to myself, yeah, but the risk. And what I realized is they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And the everything to gain was only thing separating them was a piece of glass. So they threw the barrier through the window and rushed in and were followed by a swarm of other people, depending on where they went, going in and grabbing computer equipment, grabbing clothing. And I thought, how did this happen? How did these people get to that point? How did a young man, let's say he was 23, 25 years old, get to the point where he was willing to risk what he had to perform such acts? Because he knew there were tons of people out there with cameras and they were going to record his face and he'd probably eventually get arrested. But at that moment, it was worth the risk. And I thought back to myself, have I ever been in such a position? And I'm sad to say, yes, I have. I didn't throw things through windows and steal stuff. But I was lost in school, and that's why I think this all goes back to education. Those young men and women had nothing to lose. And they got into that position. If they were analysts for Goldman Sachs, would they have done that? No. If they were plumbers, would they have done that? Probably not. They don't want to risk their job. If they had any kind of career or job of any consequence, would they do that? I don't think so. When I was in junior high school, I was a disruptor. As if you've watched my videos before, you know I wasn't a good student. I had a cognitive learning disability, which I didn't discover until 4 years ago, that I was dyslexic. So I was the kid in the back of the class who would chew on a wad of paper and then take it and put it in my mouth and push it into a straw and blow it into the back of somebody's head. I was the guy in the class who'd sit there and go, and just drive the teachers crazy. I was a disruptor. Why? Because I didn't have any reason to be there. I wasn't learning anything. They didn't know how to teach me. I couldn't read. My mind couldn't process a 3-syllable word. So the only reason I was there was to be ridiculed by my fellow students, that I was stupid, that I was a dummy, that I would never make anything out of my life. When I went to the school counselor in the senior year of my high school, they told me to go to trade school because I couldn't read. I had the reading capabilities of an 8th grader, and I didn't. But the only thing that saved me was I was an angry kid. I had lost my mother at a young age, and I didn't get along. I was angry. But that made me a hell of an athlete. I had good legs, I was fast, and I was mean. And you put me on a football field, and I don't care how big you are, I'll take you on. And I was angry. And so I vented my anger on the football field. And at the time, I believed I could achieve anything that I put my mind to, because I stood up to 240-pound people and put them down on the ground. And I knew I was strong, and I knew that I was fast, and I could achieve. So I went ahead to college. Now, I didn't have the grades to go to college, but back then they had what they called land-grant colleges, and they had to take you if you applied and you lived in that state. Now, what they had to also do was flunk out 2/3 of you in the first quarter so that they had room for everybody to move on. And through just damn meanness and determination, I made it through. Didn't have good grades. So I identify with those young men who didn't have anything to lose. And so they were taking what was theirs. And as they live in the world today, the equation and the difference between what they have and what others have just keeps getting wider, and they get angrier and angrier. And so when the opportunity presents itself to vent that anger, they take it. So what's the solution to this? The solution is education. You have to turn that young man anger into opportunity. And I think what we don't recognize is our education is not the problem. The problem is the delivery system, that we teach to the mass. No one taught to me. No one taught to Carrie. No one took the time or had the knowledge to find out that Carrie was dyslexic, that Carrie really had some wonderful talents. He was extremely good at logic. He had a strong will. He was a hard worker. But we never got to that because they weren't teaching to me. So I was watching an interview with one of the founders of Instagram, and he was talking about the work he's doing with a partner on kind of tracking by state the rise and the fall in corona crisis and coronavirus cases. And he was asked the question, why doesn't big tech get involved in this? Why doesn't big tech get involved in finding a cure for the corona crisis? And he said, well, you have to look at it from a business standpoint. They're in business to make money. They're in business to grow their company. And if they get involved to this, is that a short-term business? And once they find the cure, once they spend billions of dollars in finding a cure and it's cured, now what do? How do they justify to their stockholders that that was a good expenditure of their funds, even though it saved lives? How do they do that? And he says, and that's the turmoil that's going through Silicon Valley right as we speak. How do we get involved in this and then perpetuate it to make it work? And his answer was they can't get involved until where individuals' lives become more important than their privacy. And he says we're not there yet. We're literally not there yet. People would rather risk their life in getting a disease than giving up their privacy. So my smart bathroom isn't going to happen as fast as I thought it would. So then I got to thinking, okay, how does that work to education? Well, our education system right now, and I'll use Harvard and Princeton as an example, have a cost per year of $74,000. Now, the dean at Harvard and Princeton is going to raise their hand real quick and say, yeah, but our average student only pays $10,000 a year. Everything else is taken care of through our foundations, through our grants, through our scholarships. The student only pays $10,000. But I would raise my hand and say, yeah, but Dean, that other $64,000 is being spent on something other than the young men throwing barriers through the glass. That's money that's being channeled in a direction to support your antiquated organization. Your antiquated organization that teaches maybe 10,000 people a year at the rate of $74,000 a year and doesn't teach the rest of the world, doesn't teach the rest of the world because of all kinds of barriers, whether it be the luck of the birth canal, money, prestige, fathers, position in the community, keep them out of that school. So we have to find a way to deliver the education so that it's cost everybody the same thing and it's affordable. And again, that is what I talked about in my last video. That is about artificial intelligence and augmented learning and the goggles I wore in the last one where the goggles are watching my eyes and learning how I learn as much as I'm learning the information that's being offered to me. And now if education can, rather than be teaching 200 people in a classroom and teaching one way to all 200 of them, now we're teaching to 2 million people and we're teaching to their way of responding. This becomes a viable business. If I had the opportunity to create this and charge $25 for each lesson, and those lessons were being taught by the best professors in the world, and I don't mean the normal college professor. I mean the professor on entrepreneurism as a guy by the name of Jeff Bezos. And the guy teaching the social media class is a guy by the name of Mark Zuckerberg, and the people teaching search engine optimization is a guy by the name of Larry Page. Then I'm getting the best education I can possibly get, as well as the other professors that earn their marks to have the right to teach me. Then this education becomes a viable business that works, that teaches people to their abilities and to their way of learning. Now, that young man in Minneapolis, in Indianapolis, in Los Angeles, in Birmingham, in whatever city you want to name that is thinking about tonight, when it gets dark, I'm going to go downtown and I'm going to throw something through the Target window and I'm going to go in there and get whatever I want. Because I got nothing to risk. What are they going to do? Put me in jail? Well, then at least I'll have 3 meals and a bed to sleep in. And they aren't going to keep me all that long because, hell, the prisons are already overcrowded. I got nothing to risk and everything to gain. So we have to teach them differently. And speaking about teaching, I watched those policemen. I saw another one where, and this really hurt me, where 2 officers were on top of a guy, and the one guy put his knee on the guy's neck, and the other officer moved his leg over. And what I realized, those officers were just doing what they were trained to do. Hell, I was trained in the United States Army in the infantry. And during hand-to-hand combat, I was taught to bang my rifle into his head, bang my muzzle into his, and take him to the ground. And when he hit the ground, the first thing I was taught to do was take my big black boot and stomp on his neck and scream, "Kill." And if that didn't do it, to drop my knee into his chest as hard as I could and scream, "Kill." That's what I was trained to do. I was trained to kill Vietnamese. I was trained to do that. So when Lieutenant Calley went into the village in Vietnam and burnt everybody out, and his officer said he went too far, he didn't have an on and off button. He didn't have an on and off switch because he was trained to do what I was trained to do. I was a marksman. I was trained to be on top of a building as a sniper and to shoot people. And if I had been not in Ball State, in Muncie, Indiana, but instead had been in Ohio State, I might have been the National Guard trooper on the top of Kent State. And they would have been singing about me, 3 dead in Ohio. Because that's what I was trained to do, and that's what I was told to do. And we got to change this. And it isn't going to happen from our government, and it isn't going to happen from our president. So I expect the big six to step up to this and make this right. You've got the money, you've got the talent, you've got the spirit. Fix this now.